Evening, Dean.
Evening.
How you doing?
I'm alright. Got hay fever.
Yeah. If you carry on sitting just like that, the shadows cover your face so it doesn't look like you've just gone 10 rounds with Tyson. So
Yeah.
Cole, it's late. You've got hay fever, so I won't keep you. Gonna delve right into the prep questions. First of all, how does it feel being an adoptee?
What do you mean?
So, somebody who is adopted.
How does it feel to be adopted? How does it feel after being adopted? How does it feel before being adopted? How does it feel being an adopted kid in a non-adoptive school?
In general, how does it feel being adopted?
I mean, personally, I think it's pretty good because, it was an upgrade in life for me. Being adopted meant I wasn't, with my birth family or in foster care with the uncertainty. So it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And also, sometimes it's a bit daunting. Well, not anymore, but it used to be a bit like these random people are going to come get me, or they might be mean, or And then when I first got adopted, it's like I've got to meet all these new people, make all these new friends, basically cut off all the connections I had with my old family.
Absolutely.
So it's a bit
scary. When adopters sort of they get a profile of a particular child and they get to see sort of like a synopsis of that child. When they express interest, they then get what's called the Child Permanency Report, which is the thick chronological file on...
Kind of like the later life letter.
It's even longer and in more depth than that. Yeah. So the adopters get that information. And as you can imagine, just from your reaction there, it can be quite daunting. What would be your sort of advice and guidance to an adopter? So think of your later life letter, add even more like dates and facts and stuff like that. Imagine me, the adopter, reading that about you, never meeting you, but I read that about you. What would be your advice to me as I read that when thinking about you?
My first thing, especially if it's like abusive background or whatever, don't assume that the kid's going to be this like emotional, broken roller coaster wreck. Because actually, they might be alright. They might just end up being a normal kid, kind of like I was. Also, it's prepare for the best and the worst almost. Like, prepare for the worst and hope for the best kind of thing. So, be prepared. There will be struggles. There will be emotional, hills to climb. That kind of thing. Know when to pick the battles. As well. But yeah, it's just about preparing that they could just be perfectly fine, it not affect them, kind of like me, or on the converse, you might have a kid who's really, their trauma is still a big part of, what happened to them, and it really affects them. So it's just about making accommodations, but not assuming that they're going to be broken, because if you treat someone like they're broken, then they are, effectively, because we are what other people define us as. So...
What do you think was some of the things, sort of like some of the simple things that we did in the early days that you think we did right that helped you sort of feel?
I'm not sure, to be honest. You did everything right for me. So it's unique to the child. It's what the child wants. You were just very accommodating of my temper tantrums. And you did almost everything right. You didn't give me the right colours. But yeah, so it's just kind of about it's meeting the needs of the child individually. So as you get to know them and what they're like, surrounding themselves with things that you can distract them with if they're having a tantrum. And definitely keep them away from shoe cabinets during arguments.
Definitely.
Have they heard that story yet?
They have.
Yeah.
What can you remember that stands out as some of the initial things that sort of made you feel settled into our life?
So you very quickly helped me establish a routine, and especially for me, that was good. I love my routines. But I think something like that provides that kind of regularity, because I think for a lot of adopted kids, where there's, especially the older placements, there's that uncertainty during foster care, and so getting like a regular rhythm, like, okay, what's like, if this is how things are done, then what's going to change about this? I get up at this time, I eat, and I do this. Like that's something I can settle into, and that's something that will be the same for a while unless I change it. So
Yep.
kind of that, I think that helped me looking back on it.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Okay. So that on the training we talk about contact.
Yeah.
What would you say is your overall viewpoint on contact in all its forms?
So, taking like people out of it, contact is good because it means that you don't shut the door on anything. Because like if they have questions, like don't be afraid to let them ask and answer them and stuff. Like they're not trying to go back to their old parents in most cases, especially older placements. They're smart enough to know that, this is better. Even if I am stuck with you. But, so yeah, don't be afraid to have the contacts there and available, because it actually might be very beneficial. Kind of letting them, have that as a opportunity to ask questions, get like backstory on them almost, because if they're, they might not be broken or whatever, but they might have some emotional uncertainties because they're past, and they want to like get the full picture of like who they are and their identity as well. It's like me, I wanted to see a picture of my real dad just so I knew what he looked like. Yeah, and before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, for you then,
Yeah.
what would you say is your relationship with contact? What would you, if you had a choice, would you carry it on?
I'm on the fence, because on the one hand, I want to be able to have that opportunity to ask questions, but on the other hand, I'm smart enough to know that my mum wasn't the best to me, and I don't think she deserves contact with me, really.
Okay.
To be blunt, I sound selfish, but it's one of those things you've got to be selfish about.
Yep.
So I don't want to keep it up. I want you guys to keep it up.
Yeah, which is absolutely
that's
fine.
obviously what we do.
Absolutely
Because if I have questions that aren't answered, then I need that available.
Yeah. There are a target group that obviously you read your latest life letter. I haven't obviously spoke about what we spoke about prior to you reading it.
Yeah.
But I was asked the question of, after reading it, did it sort of alter how you feel about your mum? Did it change anything?
So, I mean, it gave me a little bit of insight to her. Because obviously, some of the like things I mentioned about her and her character and her past kind of helped me make a bit more sense of, not exactly like why it happened, but just a little bit more of like circumstances that might have led to this kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I still feel pretty much the same though, kind of like, I don't like her, and I have every right not to like her,
Absolutely.
So it's kind of, my stance hasn't changed. I just understand her a bit more.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's absolutely fair. Absolutely fair. There's been a discussion recently about the terminology contact, and if the terminology contact is a bit outdated, and should it be changed? And if it were to be changed, what could it be changed to? First thing, how do you feel about the actual term?
So, I mean, I think it does the job, but it's, it's contact, you're keeping in contact with